So I am from Arizona. I did my undergraduate in Flagstaff at NAU, and so I've been around the state for a very long time. I got involved in pathogens in kind of a strange way because I was trained as a geneticist or an evolutionary biologist, even. And I was working as a young faculty member in Flagstaff, and a friend of mine at Los Alamos National Laboratory said, "We've got this real problem that we're having trouble cracking, and it has to do with anthrax." And so I said, "Okay, well, then we will just try to take our evolutionary biology and genomics techniques that we're using on other things and do it with anthrax." So that was 25 years ago. And so I got sucked into the pathogen world, and I've never looked back because our approach to genomics and evolutionary biology plays really well in this space, and we're able to contribute things that nobody else could. The partnerships between institutions in Arizona are really important. We're not a big place, right? We don't have zillions of scientists floating around like Boston or San Francisco or Seattle. And so we really have to work with the people that we have. And that means that all three of the state universities in TGen work together really well. You may be, you probably know this already, but I founded TGen North with Jeff Trent. In the year 2003, I was being recruited real heavily to move out of the state of Arizona. And this is right after Jeff Trent came in and founded TGen. And so he said, "Well, why don't we build an institute that focuses upon pathogen genomics, and we'll put it in Flagstaff?" And so I said, "Wow, that sounds great." So in 2003, Jeff Trent and John Hager, who was the president at NAU, made it possible for me to stay in the state of Arizona by opening up the TGen North unit. What that did is it gave us cutting edge genomic technology that was totally lacking in the state of Arizona. Prior to that, I'd spent all my time flying to the East Coast or flying to the West Coast where they had the big DNA sequencers that we needed to push our science forward. And we just didn't have them in Arizona. With the emergence of TGen and all of its work on the human genome, we were able to ride on their coattails in the pathogen world and do some really wonderful things. The other two state universities were bound together by a common mission to improve the health and also the education of Arizona citizens. And we've worked with them really well. Josh LeBaire and I at BioDesign have held a number of contracts together. I think I send more money to BioDesign than they send to me, but that's, again, something we can discuss later. During the pandemic, it was a really good example of how working with TGen and the three state universities was so beneficial. We stood up the Arizona COVID Consortium. And so that was a group that kept track of COVID cases within the state of Arizona and then put those into the context of the entire nation and also the whole world. And so we published some very important papers, U of A, ASU, TGen, NAU, really important papers for understanding exactly what was happening during the pandemic in real time. And so that's an example of how, in a small place, you've got to work well with the other people that are occupying that space with you. And I think it's been really productive. It allows Arizona science to exceed in ways that wouldn't happen in other places. So anthrax research was kind of a niche area that wasn't being pursued by too many people around the world. We got involved because of my relationship with Los Alamos National Laboratory, which is, again, part of the Southwest United States Science Consortium. And so we started using our evolutionary biology tools and genomics tools to look at anthrax. And what we were able to do was something nobody else had ever done with anthrax, which was tell one type of anthrax from another type. We could precisely identify the type of anthrax that was found anywhere in the world. We'd built databases, we'd done genomic analysis. And so in October of 2001, when the first victim came down with anthrax, the FBI and the CDC put a sample of that on a corporate jet and flew it to Flagstaff, Arizona. Who would have thought, that those folks on the East Coast with their big research institutions were coming to Flagstaff because we're the ones who knew how to do this. Before the first victim died, we identified the strain. We had strong evidence at that point that this was a bioterrorism attack and that it involved a laboratory strain. It wasn't just a natural, unfortunate infection with anthrax. So it was really our capabilities in that specific area that led them to us. And that just then set off a snowball effect for the next 8 years. We became the anthrax investigative lab for the FBI. We stored over 1,000 pieces of evidence from the cases that occurred across the eastern United States. And we were preparing to go to trial and testify about what we had found in pursuit of whoever had done that particular crime. Yeah, so 20 years after the anthrax letter attacks occurred, it was really gratifying to see that in hindsight, people really appreciated what we did during that investigation. In the heat of the battle, there was so much rhetoric about who was doing what, and there were a lot of people taking credit for contributing to the investigation. Whereas in reality, it was us. We were the ones who were getting in there and figuring out exactly what was happening. And we were trying to keep a low profile. The FBI had warned us that if we got out too much in front of this, that the perpetrator might come after us to stop us from what we were doing. And so that was sobering. And so we actually did keep a relatively low profile at the time. Now, 20 years later, this Netflix documentary has come out, and we get a lot of credit in it, a lot of airtime for the role that we played in figuring out who had actually sent these letters out. And that occurred right here in Arizona. It was with Arizona kids working in the laboratory and us stepping forward and handling, again, all the evidence. The FBI didn't have the capability at that time to handle evidence that involved a highly dangerous pathogen like anthrax. And so they had great technical detail in the area of DNA, but they couldn't handle the anthrax. And it was our technology and our investment in biosafety infrastructure that allowed us to play such an important role. The docudrama itself is highly entertaining, and so I actually would recommend people go watch it, not just because it took place in Arizona and because I get a lot of airtime on it, but it's very entertaining. They pulled in a actor, Clark Gregg from Marvel Comics, who plays the role of Dr. Bruce Ivans, who I won't spoil the ending, has a very important part of the entire thing. And so this Marvel Comics actor comes in and plays the role of people who weren't available to play the role. And it makes it into a very interesting and entertaining type of show. For me, I really deserve almost no credit for the show itself. All I do is sit in front of a camera and talk. And I do that a lot. So it's not like there was anything special going on for this particular Netflix. But apparently what I said in our story about what we did was compelling enough that Dan Krause, the director of the Netflix show, gave us a really prominent place in the entire process. And that doesn't always happen. I spend a lot of time in front of cameras and then only end up with, 3-second sound bites on the 5:30 news or something. This was very nice. And again, it was very gratifying that 20 years later, people still see what we did and recognize what an important role we had. So I was an undergraduate at NAU, and I got a degree in biology and chemistry there. And so, having a research experience at that early stage in your life is so important for determining the pathway forward and where you end up in your career, either as a scientist or as just a citizen who understands science. And so that undergraduate experience is something that I really appreciate. NAU is a largely undergraduate institution. I mean, we have very good graduate programs, but we pride ourselves in training undergraduates at NAU. And I think that we get some of the best undergraduates in Arizona. And I can tell you that when they come, they're hungry and they want to work hard and they want to learn. And so we take advantage of that. We have developed a program for training students in my laboratory where, first off, we pay every student. Nobody's a volunteer. We make sure that everyone gets paid. We don't want them working at McDonald's. We don't want them doing something else. We want them in the laboratory. And we want them in the laboratory for 2 or 3 years while they're at NAU. We'd like to have them settle in their first year, but after their first semester at NAU, we start looking for the good ones and bringing them in and training them. And then critical to our program is that we have undergraduates train undergraduates. And so by the time our students are sophomores and juniors, they're training the new freshmen that are coming into the group. And that gives us really two things. It allows us to leverage our faculty time, because we can't have faculty in the laboratory teaching every single lab skill. And so it leverages, makes it cost effective for us from a management standpoint. But the other thing is when a student teaches another student, they really understand what they're saying, right? So, you hear it once from somebody and you kind of understand it. But when you start explaining that to somebody else, you have to really know it. And so by the time our students are training other students, they're really proficient at the skills and the knowledge that they're passing on. So that train the trainer philosophy is very important to our whole program. The other thing we like to do is we like to grab those students as they graduate and keep them around for 1 year as a gap year and pay them as full-time technicians or even as graduate students before they head off to the rest of their lives and the rest of their careers. And so if I can do that to 5 undergraduates a year, I end up with a 5-year employee. And they're already trained, we've already trained them. We know what they can do. So I think we've got this amazing pipeline or conveyor belt of talent that comes into NAU and that we nurture and we develop and then we hold on to for a little while to take advantage so that we can do our cutting edge world-class research with people who maybe don't have PhDs, but they're out there doing the work and they're highly trained. And so I've been doing this for 34 years now. We actually have a director of undergraduate training, and she keeps track of them. They do professional development activities to further their careers, but then they also work on teams of scientists in a real workplace environment. So they actually know what it's like to work in science, in addition to knowing all the classroom stuff. Yeah, so probably one of the most important things that we've done is develop this method for tracking back diseases. So infectious diseases are caused by germs or pathogens. They can be viruses like COVID, or they can be bacteria like anthrax, or fungi like valley fever. Knowing where they come from means that we can do something to prevent them causing diseases in the future. Foodborne illness like E. coli in a hamburger is a good example. If we can figure out where that came from, then we can step in and eliminate the source of that and save a lot of people from getting sick. We do that with genomic analysis of the pathogens themselves. We look at their DNA or their RNA, and we look at it to see if we can tell which ones are coming from the same source and which ones are coming from different sources. We've now applied this approach to anthrax, of course. We investigated the cholera outbreak in 2010 in Haiti and identified its source as from peacekeepers from Nepal. We've looked at valley fever cases. For example, we had a case of a person who got valley fever from an organ transplant. We were able to show with the DNA analysis that they really did come from the same source. So multiple people getting organs from a donor who was infected. So this whole paradigm was developed because we had a lot of money to do the research in the early 2000s because of the anthrax investigation. Normally in healthcare system and in all of life, whatever you do has to be economically feasible. In the case of investigating the anthrax letters, it was how much money do you need, and then go do it. So we did things then that we couldn't really afford to do for more common diseases, but we can now because the technology has gotten cheaper, it's gotten faster. And so now we take that same approach we did with the anthrax letters in 2001, and we apply it to all sorts of things, and notably valley fever. We have a project right now with the University of Arizona and Arizona State University trying to track down exactly where in the state valley fever originates and how it infects people. Again, using exactly the same approach. So I'd say, if you do something once, that's great. But if you can develop an approach that can be used over and over again, then that's even better. And that's what we've done with this molecular approach, this genome approach to tracking diseases. So I'm spending this year of my sabbatical at Oxford University, and it's been really, really great. This is a 800, 900-year-old university, and so their traditions and their approach to academics is just classic. And with young universities like at NAU, where we're about a little over 100 years old, we just don't have that long tradition. And so it's like going to Mecca, I guess, for a Muslim. You've gone back to the roots of everything that we do in academia and seeing its origins and seeing how it works. Of course, Oxford has just a fabulous set of scientists here that I've known for years and worked with. And so being here, working with them on a day-to-day basis, literally walking across the campus, I'll walk into Nobel Prize winners, and so we've got really good scientists in Arizona, but walking across campus, I don't bump into Nobel Prize winners very often. And so I'm really enjoying that. I'm being able to explore different areas of science than I had been back in Arizona, partly because I've just been freed up from a lot of administrative responsibilities that I have in Arizona. And so I'm writing a book with a colleague here on infectious diseases. And I'll be glad to send you all a signed copy when it's done. But don't hold your breath. It's hard writing a book. But that's what I'm doing is I'm writing a book on infectious diseases. And I'm enjoying the process a lot and looking forward to generating something that will be useful for educating everybody, not just scientists, everybody about infectious diseases and how they're important in our lives. I love Arizona, and I've been a faculty member at NAU for 34 years. And before that, I was an undergraduate. So I've been kicking around Arizona for at least 50 years now. And, just love the environment. The people and the place is just unique and different from anywhere else in the world. And I have been everywhere in the world. I've been to almost 50 countries. And so people ask me, well, if you had one place to live, where would it be? I say, well, Flagstaff, Arizona, of course. And so every chance I've had to leave, I always come back. And that's going to be the same with this sabbatical. When this is over next summer, in the summer of 2023, I'll be coming back and resuming my position as the executive director of the Pathogen and Microbiome Institute at NAU. And I continue to be a distinguished professor at TGen and interact with the TGen North group as well. So I'm coming back, and I'm enjoying science. I'm enjoying it here in Oxford, but I enjoy it in Arizona too. And as long as I enjoyed science, I'm going to keep doing it because it's really fun. It's so intellectually engaging. You get to interact with young, exciting students who are just learning about science. And you get to help people because the science that we do really does have a translational aspect that turns around and improves people's lives and their health.